The next morning, I had woken up early and was taking a stroll through the garden. Is that? ... Good morning, Eltcreed.
Oh, up already? I suppose that sort of discipline should be expected from an officer of the law.
I could say the same of you. You're awfully energetic considering how late you stayed up last night.
Uh-oh, did one of my servants say something? I'm just always like this. I make it a rule to never appear out of sorts. Although, I do feel that I rather embarrassed myself yesterday. I've been in deep reflection.
Embarrassed yourself? How?
Must I explain? What, do you find my tragedy amusing? Alright, fine. I'm referring to how I lost my composure over Heine. Not to mention how I gorged myself on pasta in front of everyone afterward. It was disgraceful.
Drowned his sorrows in pasta. Oh, don't worry about it. But is your stomach alright? I was concerned you were going to eat until you burst.
Yes, I have a second stomach when it comes to pasta. Thank you for asking, though. I spent the rest of last night thinking. What does Heine mean to you, Cyrus? No, wait. Let me rephrase the question. Does knowing he is the man you once admired change how you see him? Ay.
No? No, not really. I certainly was surprised, though. Sir Ines is an honorable man. That much is true regardless of whether we met in the past.
I see.
Is that not the answer you were hoping for?
Are you asking that because my complexion is turning colors? Sorry, I shouldn't have answered a question with another question. There is no right or wrong answer. I just wanted to know how you felt. If I let little things like this get me down, the name Eltcreed Valentine would fade into obscurity. I should follow your example and keep my composure. Just you wait, Cyrus. I'll be back to my old self in no time.
Alright, we got a Yune episode unlocked for some reason. I'll take it, I guess. Once we all finished breakfast, we loaded ourselves into a carriage at the front of the estate. The next several hours were spent just making our way to the edge of the depths. And we're off. Eltcreed, I see the fog!
Yes, I see it too.
Hey, we're on a carriage. Let's go!
And how do we plan to cross it again?
Simple, we cut straight through. Everyone hold on tight. Hiya!
Nice. And we're in it.
It's so white. I feel like I'm inside a cloud. I've never been in fog like this before.
You too, Saint Yune. Then it's an honor to share this experience with you. We get fog all the time in Libralitas, but it's nothing like this.
I'm glad everyone's having fun.
We're finally here. This is so exciting.
Please be careful. Okay, this is gonna be for each of the guys. Ines is probably the please be careful. I feel like Yune would be like, the breeze is so nice. So I'm gonna guess the bottom's the right one for Eltcreed. Yep. Are you sure we're going the right way?
Yes, I think.
You think?
I'm 80 to 90% sure. Well, maybe 70. Or 60.
Eltcreed.
I'm only kidding. Another patented Eltcreed joke. It's just my way of trying to lighten the mood.
I have faith in you, Eltcreed.
Don't worry. I would never betray that faith.
Alright, see that you don't.
This fog isn't so easy to break through after all.
I can only imagine.
You're assuming it's even possible.
Of course it's possible. Ulrik's party has already made it to the other side. Then again, maybe our land route differs significantly from the air route they took.
Our horse-drawn carriage continued through a barren wasteland of sandy brown earth. The fog was so dense that we couldn't see anything. The only sounds were the echoes of the horses' hooves and the carriage rolling over the ground.
All I can see is white.
Yes. I hope the poor visibility doesn't cause us to go barreling blindly over a cliff or anything.
Those are the sort of thoughts you should keep to yourself.
He's right.
Indeed. My apologies.
Time seemed to stop as we moved through the endless fog. All we could do was keep going forward. Even when I listened closely, it was as if the fog absorbed all the sound around us, leaving behind an unsettling silence.
But don't worry, I know we'll make it through eventually. The only question is what's going to happen between now and then.
The confidence in Eltcreed's voice helped to put our minds at ease. The horses continued racing through the blinding whiteness. After several more hours, the fog finally started to thin. How do you know it's been hours? We could see it beginning to clear in the distance, giving us hope that we were making progress.
Just a bit farther, Cyrus. We're almost through the fog.
The carriage continued moving steadily toward the scenery on the horizon. The four of us eagerly awaited our emergence on the other side. And... not quite what I was expecting. All at once, we could see again. As the mist gave way, a landscape beyond imagination spread out before us. Ah! The carriage came to a sudden, screeching halt. I let out a scream as the carriage lurched violently. It was a terrifying experience. A moment later, Eltcreed's voice cut through the tension.
Everything is fine, but please remain perfectly still.
Oh? The carriage had stopped just in time. A deep ravine stretched out beyond the steep cliff in front of us. Whew! It was a precarious situation. One more step would have sent us tumbling into the abyss below. Ah, well, this is starting to look correct.
That was a close one. Is everyone okay?
Yes. Thank goodness for your quick reflexes.
Sorry for scaring you all half to death. Would you look at that view? Shall we hop out and take a break?
That's fine with me. This seems like a good place for a quick rest.
I slowly climbed down from the carriage. A pleasant breeze kissed my skin as I planted my feet on the ground. Such slow pan over background. Lots and lots of slow pan over back. I think we're like looking at this more than we did when we were in the blimp. Or sorry, the air car or whatever it was called. The view of the valley beneath the cliff was incredible, and it left me feeling invigorated. We all gazed out in silence, as if overwhelmed by the natural splendor of the landscape before us. I had no idea it would be this beautiful on the other side. Beyond the sheer, seemingly bottomless chasm stretched a vast and unknown land. My body tingled with excitement, like I had discovered a brand new world. In a way.
A canyon. Or more like a Grand Canyon at this size.
I see what you did there, Yune. What's a canyon?
A massive natural cutout in the landscape like this. I know a little about them, but I've never seen one this big. It's breathtaking. Nature possesses more power and beauty than we can possibly imagine. Sights like this make you realize how small and insignificant we truly are.
Saint Yune's expression was gentle as he finished speaking, as if he was touched by the majesty of it all. Eltcreed and Ines also gazed out at the canyon in wonder. They almost had identical expressions.
This feels like the perfect moment to take a break, unpack some food, and enjoy the lovely scenery.
You don't mind stopping?
I find my stomach grumbling for some reason, and we could all use a breather, the horses and us both. Let's take some time to plan our next steps.
Fog? We followed Eltcreed's suggestion and decided to rest for a bit. The wind blew gently as if welcoming us. And so we resumed our journey, weaving our way through the canyon. Okay, so much for taking a break for food. We just skipped all over that. Man, the horses are disappearing into the fog. The path up the opposite cliff face was steep, and progress was slow. The horses' hooves and the creaking of the carriage combined to create a peculiar rhythm. It was almost like a song to accompany our travels. Didn't even get to the back of the carriage that time. We continued like that, day in and day out. I wonder how many days they traveled. It took Eltcreed a while to come last time when we were in Ulrik's route. We all had different thoughts and feelings on our minds, but one thing we shared was the sense of anticipation about the unknown that lay ahead. After several days, we finally made it up the other side, only to be greeted by another wall of fog. More fog?
The desert must be just beyond. We should keep moving.
As the carriage progressed deeper and deeper into the mist, the texture of the ground beneath us steadily began to change. The cold and the damp slowly faded as the air against my cheeks turned dry. Even the smell of the mud rising up from the ground vanished, replaced by the scent of a mild breeze that blew in from the distance.
I think we've just about entered the desert. You should probably shut your eyes to protect them from the sand.
Yes. Sandstorms can cause serious damage. Understood. I'm ready.
I'm ready too. Well, somebody's got to keep their eyes open driving this carriage. The carriage continued its progress, moving ever forward. I could sense the fog fading against my skin, the air clearing in my nose, the sound of the wind changing in my ears. All at once, I felt myself bombarded by a million tiny particles. It was different from the fog. This was something dry. The wind was picking up, and each time it gusted, I felt more and more bits of sand against my skin. Eventually, my sense of the fog disappeared completely, and my whole body was enveloped by a warm breeze. At that moment, I knew we had left the fog behind and entered the desert. Oh, shoot! I was so overwhelmed by the environment's transformation that I forgot to keep my eyes shut. Harsh sunlight stung them. The sand swirling all around me, combined with my lost vision, made my heart race with anxiety.
Are you all right, Cyrus? Try to let your eyes adjust slowly.
Right. How are you doing, Eltcreed?
I'm managing well enough. Whoa there, easy now.
Ah, I can finally see again. My anxiety was instantly replaced by relief and curiosity. Eltcreed hopped out of the carriage, and I followed suit, surveying our surroundings. How well does a carriage roll in a desert, out of curiosity? I've never stopped to think about this. Although, I guess, like, wagons and stuff can travel through deserts, so a carriage should be fine. So, this is the desert. It's nothing but sand. It's coarse and it gets everywhere. I feel like this is the obvious Ines thing. It was just like very practical, like, it's hot here. I'm gonna go bottom? I just feel like Yune's just gonna be like a kid, basically, the entire time. Like, everything's cool, and everything's wonderful because I'm out of my tower. So, I'm gonna go, it's nothing but sand. Do the Anakin answer. Hey, there we go. I knew you were an Anakin, Eltcreed. There's sand everywhere I look.
You can say that again. In fact, there's nothing but sand. We can play in it all we want. Shall we get in touch with our inner children and make sandcastles?
That sounds like fun, not gonna lie. Eltcreed.
I'm being serious. I would never tease you at a time like this.
The heat is making it hard to breathe. Supposedly the air turns frigid at night, but I find that hard to believe.
I knew you were gonna be like, it's hot here.
It's the truth, though. Ulrik wouldn't have lied in his report.
An excellent point. He wouldn't want to damage his credibility as an information broker. But setting that aside, where do we go from here? This carriage wasn't made for traveling through the desert.
Okay, well I guess that answers my question. Thank you, Yune. I also like that Yune's sticking up for Ulrik. I guess this means in this version of events, Ulrik's the one that's been taking meticulous notes, which checks out, honestly.
Indeed. That's why we're going to have someone pick us up.
You mean Ulrik?
That would be the ideal scenario, but I'm not optimistic. There isn't anywhere we could specify as a rendezvous point, and his letter explicitly instructed us to find your own way here.
That seems harsh.
It's love and trust. His cockiness is endearing. It only hurts a little bit.
So it does hurt.
It does.
That's just Ulrik. He never does things the easy way. He always wants a fight. Now everyone, please cover your ears.
Eltcreed said before moving away from the carriage a few paces. What are you doing? He seemed to be having a hard time walking, stumbling through the sand with each step. What on earth are you... Ah! You know, that's not a bad plan. Before I could finish my question, a gunshot rattled my eardrums. Then a second, and a third. He was firing into the air. I think that's enough! Without hesitating, he fired off a fourth, fifth, and sixth shot. Finally out of bullets, he lowered his arm and turned back to face us. A satisfied smile spread across his face.
I may have gotten a little carried away in my eagerness to reunite.
As usual, I wasn't following his logic. While I stood there at a loss for words, Sir Ines finally spoke up.
Was that a signal?
Precisely. Unfortunately, there's no telling who I just called. I understand they don't have guns here, so anyone curious might... Oh, look! Someone is already on their way.
I looked to where Eltcreed was pointing and saw a tiny dust cloud in the distance. Several riders were approaching on the backs of four-legged animals not quite like horses.
Unless I'm mistaken, those look like soldiers. They're armed with curved swords.
What if they're coming to attack us?
There's no need to get antsy. You too, Heine. You both may be skilled fighters, but diplomacy is not your strong suit. Just let me handle this. Stand back and watch the master at work.
Oh boy, here we go.
Who are you? What are you doing here?
We are but humble travelers from beyond the fog. Our destination is Cainabel, but as you can see, we've become stranded. I sounded my noisemaker in the hopes that someone might come to our aid, and here you are. What blessed fortune! We're enormously grateful to have run into you.
I heard one of the soldiers ask, "What do we do?" in a voice that was almost drowned out by the wind. They seemed to be discussing how to deal with us.
The gods teach us that righteous travelers are like the great river. If we obstruct them, our country will wither. Considering the direction they've come from, they should be safe. But who's going to take responsibility if something happens? Don't look at me. I can hear everything they're saying. What sort of training did these soldiers receive?
Is that the former Hounds officer in you talking?
Yes, and the current police officer.
Ines, stop, you're killing me. If only we had some way to prove who we are. What about Ulrik's report?
That wouldn't be advisable. If we let them see it, there's a chance they might think we're spies. We'd be taking a risk.
Agreed. The soldiers seem wary enough as it is. I guess the more we claim we're innocent, the more suspicious we might appear. I watched the soldiers quietly, growing more and more impatient. Then finally, one of the soldiers approached us and spoke.
Ilia uiska vasis.
They were words I had never heard before. I glanced over at St. Yune, but he shook his head subtly, not seeming to understand either.
What does that mean?
Do they not know? Or are they just pretending not to know? Yeah, they keep testing them with that phrase, and I'm like, what does that mean?
None of them has shown much of a reaction.
A man who appeared to be the most level-headed let out a sigh at the voices of the soldiers to his rear. You don't seem to be from Grendel. But what does beyond the fog mean? Grendel. Okay. Where's Grendel?
Just as it sounds. We came from a country that lies on the other side of the fog. As you can see, our clothes and equipment are quite different from yours. Is it really that hard to believe? Would you like more definitive proof? Just ask and I'll be happy to show it. But only to someone who will recognize its value. Please take us to your king.
Who does this traveler think he is?
My proposal is in all our best interests. Whether you grant us passage or not, this decision will come with ramifications. So why not appeal to a higher authority? Wouldn't it be easier to place the responsibility on someone else's shoulders?
Our duty here is to defend our borders and serve as a guiding star to righteous travelers. To be completely honest, I'm not sure we can trust you. But that isn't my call to make. I will take you as far as the palace as you requested.
What does that mean?
Whatever happens next is in their hands. Remember, you asked for this, so don't come crying to me if things don't go the way you imagined. Follow me on foot and bring your horses with you. I'll have a separate detachment come to collect your things.
Thank you. I can't tell you what a help this is.
We're going to make Saint Yune walk.
Why don't you give him a piggyback ride, Ines?
It's alright. My legs work just fine. I don't have any problem with it.
He's like, I get to walk? Yay. Maybe it's my imagination, but there seems to be a lot of tension in the air. Out of curiosity, they didn't leave the horses in the desert with the carriage, right? Like, I'm hoping they brought the horses with them, please. They could have had, they could have had Yune ride one of the horses and the other three could take turns with the other, if it's a problem. I'm just saying.
Perhaps it's because we're outsiders. That brings back memories. For the longest time, I would receive a similar welcome whenever I was invited to visit the Heights.
Calling it a welcome is awfully generous.
It's all about how you think and speak. Time marches endlessly onward. Negative feelings will keep you trapped in the past unless you maintain a sense of optimism. We've finally arrived. The desert nation, the turbulent wind. Things are starting to get interesting.
Indeed. Despite the sudden and audacious nature of Eltcreed's proposal, we had somehow been granted access to Cainabel. Mounted soldiers surrounded us as we were led to the palace. My curiosity was aroused by sights beyond anything I could have imagined, and I found myself unable to settle.
It's rather conventional, but I find this town fascinating. I can't quite tell from this distance. I think it's made out of sand. Probably mud as well. I recall there being a large river.
They build with mud? How?
Bricks can be made by mixing mud with straw, pouring it into molds, and then drying it with heat. We have a dedicated factory in Liberalitas, but the sun here is so intense, I bet that's all they need.
Huh. I didn't know that. You learn something new every day.
There's no reason you would. I only learned it after I became more involved with maintaining the districts. I thought all the civilizations like this had been wiped out in the Great Flood. Apparently I was wrong. As we get older, our assumptions become more entrenched and our minds more rigid.
You seem flexible enough to me. The only reason the soldiers agreed to escort us was because of your clever thinking.
You think so? I would estimate my negotiation skills to be responsible for 20% at most. The rest came down to our host's strangely accommodating nature. But we can give me all the credit for now. I like how that makes me look. It's always nice when I can appear clever in front of you.
Uh-huh. Sure, I mean, why not? We were guided to the building where the king lived, the palace. The air inside was cold and heavy, completely unlike the bustling town. I felt an indescribable tension. Our temple was quieter than the surrounding city too, but not like this.
The king is just up ahead. Please show him the respect he deserves.
Yes, of course. It's an honor to be granted an audience so quickly. Our nobility tends to keep people waiting for days on end, as if it were their job or something. Your leader is clearly more discerning, much like myself. Sorry, I can be a bit boastful at times. Well, let's go and prove to the king that we have nothing to hide.
Excuse me, your highness. I've brought the individuals we spoke of.
Alright, we should just be meeting with him.
Thank you.
So he's the king. This whole room seems to reflect his majesty. A high throne in the center of the room towered over everything. The man seated in it scarcely seemed human. Marble pillars stretching all the way to the ceiling supported the throne from behind, each one adorned with delicate gold ornamentation. There was a row of soldiers stationed in the room, their demeanor tense. Their bronze armor was engraved with representations of their various gods, and the authority of the king was apparent in its unique brilliance. The servants bowed in the direction of the throne to show their respect to the king. Each was dressed in brightly colored robes that complemented the colors of the room. They stood proudly with their shoulders back, wearing jewelry intricately decorated with precious stones. The nation of Cainabel itself, its people, and its history were all on display in this one room. But the king was the center of it all, tying together everything else. His presence commanded attention, and I could tell he stood as a symbol of their nation. Alright, how's this intro gonna go? But why is there only one? Ulrik's report said they had 2 kings here. Maybe the situation didn't warrant having both of them present. Or maybe it's because we showed up unannounced. Did Jevite get almost murderized by this point? I'm trying to remember the timeline from Ulrik's route. He may be indisposed at the moment. Eltcreed was the first to break the silence. Displaying the utmost confidence, he looked directly at the throne and gave a fearless smile.
It is an honor to make your acquaintance, King Jereme. I am Eltcreed Valentine, a humble wanderer.
I detest lies. Speak the truth, Kasharak.
Oh, but I do. In this nation of Cainabel, I am a mere vagrant. But indeed, I also represent a country from beyond the fog. Our advance party is greatly indebted to you, King Jereme. I have brought a gift to express my gratitude. Please do me the honor of accepting this.
Eltcreed lowered his satchel to the floor and took his time opening it for dramatic effect. Then he pulled out
A tea set.
Correct. However, there is something that makes this one particularly unique. I can throw it against the floor like this, yet it remains intact. It's a marvelous type of tableware that can be used safely by anyone, from a toddling infant to a clumsy individual like myself. In Libralitas, that's the region I manage, it can be found in any home and purchased freely in any shop. If you desire, I'm prepared to share the manufacturing process with you, as long as certain conditions are met. I happen to think it holds much more appeal than a few trifling jewels you would just as soon sweep away. What do you think?
Impressive. Make arrangements for these outsiders as you did for Ashnamor Lavalis Jevite.
At once, sir.
And as for you all,
A moment, if I may, King Jereme. Considering this rare opportunity, won't you spend a bit more time speaking with us?
Eltcreed?
Don't you think it's strange that I have only introduced myself? Not to mention, you display a great deal of tolerance for a stranger who's only told you his name. But I suppose you must be quite busy, so I'll get right down to business. If I shared every one of my titles, we would be here for 1,001 nights, so I will spare you 90% of them and tell you simply that I am a politician.
1001 Arabian Nights? Is that what you're getting at there, Eltcreed? Very clever.
And this is Saint Yune, a revered individual who is regarded as an object of worship by a great many of our people.
That's just the sort of heavy-handed introduction you would give. An object of worship? You mean a living god? No, I'm no god. I was human once, but now I'm just a relic of a bygone era. It is not my intent to get involved in this country's religious affairs, so I would appreciate if we didn't talk about me any further. I'd rather not be responsible for an incident.
Yes, what he said. Who should I introduce next? I know. This fine young man is Ines Heinrich Heine, a police officer. In this country, I believe you call them soldiers. Ines Heinrich is his given name, and Heine is his family name.
You didn't leave much for me to say, did you? I am Ines Heinrich Heine.
Good job, Ines.
Why do you have a soldier with you?
For personal protection. I'm certain you can agree that it's dangerous to travel unarmed. By the way, Cyrus over there is also one of our guards.
A female soldier.
He's intrigued. Did we not tell him that we were one of those when we introduced ourselves last time? Maybe not. We're just gonna let Eltcreed keep yakking. I don't want to interrupt his flow. I should let Eltcreed do the talking.
This is Cyrus Testella. You'd be wise not to underestimate her. She is more than capable of holding her own in a fight.
Indeed.
That concludes our introductions. Is there anything I can clarify for you? I'm prepared to answer whatever questions you may have, King Jereme.
I have none.
I see. Well, in that case, I have one. Actually, 3, if you would indulge me. Question 1. Is an audience with King Jevite possible? Additionally, will we be able to reunite with our advance party?
No to both.
That's not good.
I see. Might I inquire as to the reason? I can't say I'm surprised, but I would like to know the details.
You talk too much. This one forgets himself.
No matter. They will find out sooner or later, so it is better not to hide it. King Jevite is currently receiving medical treatment, following an attack by an unknown assailant. Your countrymen are being held as suspects. Meeting with them is impossible at the moment.
Okay, so I was remembering the timeline correctly.
Bringing unnecessary suspicion upon yourselves would hinder your expedition, would it not? Do not worry. You are all Ashnawar Lavalis Jereme. You'll be treated as honored guests. I believe that is what Jevite would want.
Wonderful. Last question. What is Ilya Uishka Vasis?
Where did you hear that?
The soldiers who came to our aid in the desert spoke those words to us. They seem to be fishing for a reaction. Is it a password of some kind?
That phrase is slanderous in the language of another country. You would be wise not to repeat it, unless you wish to bring misfortune upon yourselves.
Understood. That information is greatly appreciated.
That went well? Ah, a mirror image of Jevite's side.
This is the living area. It serves as a shared common space. We have prepared private rooms for each of you here. From left to right, they have been assigned to Master Yune, Master Eltcreed, Master Ines, Lady Cyrus.
We have assigned rooms?
They are all identical, but a change of clothes has been provided for each of you inside. You may get dressed at your convenience.
Thank you so much for your hospitality. I have a tendency to attract negative attention no matter what I do, but I truly hope to avoid causing problems while in your country.
One last thing. In accordance with King Jereme's orders, your activities are to be severely restricted inside the palace. Specifically, your access is limited to your private quarters, the courtyard you were shown earlier, and the corridors leading outside the palace grounds. Should you desire an audience with King Jereme, please inform the nearest palace worker. They may not relay your request immediately, but the king will be informed. You can move freely outside the palace. However, please refrain from making any public statements relating to the king's situation. I will take my leave now.
Of course. Thank you so much for showing us around. Now I see why things in the palace are so tense. Everyone is still on edge following the attack on the king. I'm honestly surprised things aren't more chaotic.
An attack on a nation's leader is a serious matter. If the people found out, the rumors could take on a life of their own and tear the country apart. I wonder if they're trying to keep it quiet so they can settle the matter privately. I thought it was strange they just gave us a verbal warning, but I'll bet they've got people watching us.
You're probably right. We should be careful what we say so we don't lose their trust. So, what are we going to do now?
Whatever we do, we should change our clothes first. Let's all get ready and regroup here.